What happens when Hollywood's most famously calm man walks onto a daytime talk show stage, and the room quietly dares him to lose that calm? What happens when polite smiles harden into sharp questions, when laughter fades into something tighter, heavier, almost electric? Before we begin, make sure you subscribe to Stage View right now, like this video, and drop a comment if you're ready for stories that pull you straight into the moment, because what unfolded next wasn't just an interview. It was a turning point. The studio lights bloom like a sunrise over polished floors, warm and deceptively gentle. The View's audience is already buzzing, a low murmur of anticipation rippling from row to row. Cue cards shuffle. A producer whispers something urgent into a headset. Somewhere backstage, Paul Rudd exhales slowly, the kind of measured breath that has become second nature after decades of red carpets, press junkets, and smiling through chaos. He straightens his jacket, flashes that familiar, disarming grin at a passing crew member, and steps forward. The applause hits him instantly. It always does. It's affectionate, welcoming, almost protective. Paul Rudd, the ageless wonder, the nice guy, the actor who never seems rattled. He waves lightly, acknowledging the crowd as if they're old friends, and takes his seat at the curved table. Across from him sit the hosts, poised and polished, their smiles broadcast ready. Sunny Hostin leans forward just slightly, her posture confident, eyes alert. This isn't her first high-stakes conversation, and it won't be her last. At first, everything flows the way it always does. Light banter. A joke about time passing, and Paul somehow not aging. Laughter breaks out, genuine and easy. Paul plays along, shrugging modestly, making a self-deprecating quip that sends the audience into another round of applause. For a moment, the atmosphere is buoyant, almost weightless. But tension doesn't announce itself with a siren. It creeps in quietly. Sunny tilts her head, her smile still in place, but her tone shifts just a fraction. "Paul," she says, voice smooth but pointed, "you've been very vocal lately about certain cultural conversations happening in Hollywood." Paul nods, still relaxed. "I think it's important to listen," he replies. "To be thoughtful." Sunny doesn't interrupt. She lets the silence stretch, just long enough for the air to thicken. The audience senses it too. An almost imperceptible hush settles over the room. Even the cameras seem to lean in. "Some people," Sunny continues, "feel that celebrities like yourself pick and choose when to speak out. That you stay quiet when it's convenient and speak up when it's safe." There it is. The pivot. The soft glow of a friendly interview sharpens into something else entirely. Paul's smile fades, not dramatically, but deliberately. He doesn't bristle. He doesn't laugh it off. He listens. Truly listens. Inside, though, something stirs. Not anger, at least not yet, but resolve. The kind that comes from being misunderstood one too many times. "I don't see it that way," he says carefully. His voice remains calm, even warm, but there's a new firmness underneath. "I don't think silence always means indifference. Sometimes it means you're still learning." Sunny raises an eyebrow. "But isn't learning a privilege when others don't have the luxury of waiting?" A ripple moves through the audience. A few murmurs. Someone shifts in their seat. This is no longer small talk. Paul leans forward now, resting his forearms lightly on the table. He chooses his words with precision. "I think it becomes a problem when we assume intent, when we decide that someone's quiet moment defines their values." Sunny doesn't back down. "With respect," she says, and the phrase lands with weight, "you have a platform millions would kill for. Isn't there a responsibility that comes with that?" The camera cuts to Paul's face. Close up. Every micro-expression captured. He blinks once, slowly. In his chest, his heartbeat picks up, not from fear, but from clarity. This is the moment. The one where politeness alone won't suffice. There is a responsibility, he agrees. But there's also a responsibility not to perform outrage just to satisfy expectations. The audience gasps softly. It's subtle, but unmistakable. That wasn't a dodge. That was a line drawn. Sunny's lips press together for half a second before she responds. "So you're saying people are performing now?" "I'm saying," Paul replies, steady as stone, "that authenticity matters more than volume." The room feels smaller suddenly, as if the walls have edged closer. The other hosts glance at each other, sensing the shift. One of them tries to interject, offering a lighter comment, but Sunny holds the floor. "Authenticity," she repeats. "But who decides what's authentic?" "You." Paul shakes his head. "No. Each person does. For themselves." There's applause now, hesitant at first, then growing louder. It's not unanimous, but it's real. Paul hears it and doesn't smile. He stays focused on Sunny, his gaze respectful but unyielding. Sunny exhales a short, controlled breath. From where I sit, she says, it can look like comfort, like waiting until the temperature in the room is just right. Paul nods. I understand why it might look that way, but comfort doesn't come from waiting. It comes from knowing who you are when no one's watching. For a split second, Sunny is quiet. The silence stretches again, taut as a wire. The audience holds its breath. Somewhere off camera, a producer gestures frantically, signaling time. But this moment refuses to be rushed. Sunny finally speaks, her voice softer but no less intense. And what if people are being hurt while you're figuring that out? Paul's eyes flicker, not away but inward. Images flash through his mind. Conversations with friends, late-night talks with his kids, the weight of fame pressing against personal conscience. When he answers, it's with conviction. Then the answer isn't to shame, he says. It's to invite, to educate, to build something better together. The applause this time is louder, more confident. A few people stand before sitting back down, almost embarrassed by their own reaction. Paul hears a woman in the front row whisper, "Wow." Sunny offers a thin smile. "We'll have to agree to disagree." Paul mirrors her expression, gentle but resolute. "That's okay. Disagreement doesn't have to mean disrespect." The cameras pull back slightly, capturing the full table again. The tension hasn't vanished, but it's transformed, no longer sharp but charged. The hosts move on to the next segment, but the energy lingers like static in the air. As the show cuts to commercial, Paul leans back in his chair, releasing a breath he didn't realize he was holding. Sunny adjusts her notes, her face composed, but her eyes distant, reflective. The audience buzzes again, louder now, voices overlapping with speculation and excitement. Backstage, producers exchange looks. Phones are already lighting up. Tweets are being drafted in real time. Clips are being replayed, analyzed, slowed down, turned into something bigger than the moment itself. And Paul Rudd? He sits there calmly, firmly, knowing that whatever happens next, he didn't raise his voice. But he was heard. Because sometimes the quietest stand echoes the loudest. And this was only the beginning. The commercial break ends, and the familiar theme music washes over the studio again, bright and upbeat, almost aggressively cheerful compared to the tension still clinging to the air. The applause cue flashes, and the audience responds on instinct, clapping even as their eyes dart between Paul Rudd and Sunny Hostin. Something has shifted. Everyone feels it. The smiles return on camera, but they're tighter now, rehearsed, like masks put back on a little too quickly. Paul adjusts slightly in his chair, rolling his shoulders back. From the outside, he looks exactly the same, composed, approachable, calm. Inside, though, his thoughts are moving fast. Not defensive. Not panicked. Just alert. He knows moments like this can spiral. He's seen it happen to others. One sentence clipped out of context. One pause turned into a narrative. He reminds himself, stay present. Stay honest. Sunny glances toward the camera, then back to Paul. "We're back with Paul Rudd," she says smoothly, professional as ever. And this conversation has definitely sparked some strong reactions in our audience. A soft wave of murmurs ripples through the seats, as if on cue. Sunny continues, "I want to go a little deeper here, because I think what people at home are hearing is a tension between intention and impact." Paul nods slowly. "That's fair." She leans forward again, elbows resting lightly on the table. "Intentions may be good," she says, "but impact is what people live with. And when influential voices stay neutral, that impact can feel like abandonment." The word hangs there. Abandonment. It lands heavier than any accusation so far. Paul doesn't answer right away. The pause stretches. A few seconds that feel much longer. Somewhere in the audience, someone clears their throat. Paul's jaw tightens just slightly, not in anger, but in concentration. "I don't believe neutrality and silence are the same thing," he says finally. His voice is still calm, but there's more steel in it now. "And I don't believe that every form of support needs to be public to be real." Sunny's eyes narrow just a touch. But how would anyone know that support exists if they can't see it? Paul meets her gaze. Because sometimes the people who need it most are the ones receiving it directly, not watching it on a screen. That earns a reaction. A low from somewhere in the crowd. A few nods. A few crossed arms. One of the other hosts jumps in, trying to balance the temperature. "I think what Sunny's getting at is accountability. Public figures are role models whether they ask to be or not." Paul turns toward her politely. I understand that, he says. But I think we need to be careful about turning humanity into a performance. Sunny picks it back up immediately. Isn't speaking out part of leadership, though? Paul doesn't hesitate this time. Leadership isn't always loud. The audience reacts audibly now, some applause, some sharp inhales. The divide in the room is visible. You can almost draw a line down the middle of the seating. Sunny tilts her head, studying him. Do you worry, she asks, that this perspective gives cover to people who truly don't care? Paul's expression changes, not dramatically, but noticeably. His brows knit slightly. I worry about that, yes, he admits. But I worry more about assuming the worst in everyone. That's how conversations stop. That's how we lose each other. There's a beat. Sunny looks down at her notes, then back up. It sounds like you're asking for grace. Paul nods. I am. For everyone. The word grace seems to hit something personal. Sunny's lips part, then close again. She sits back in her chair, crossing her arms loosely, not defensively, but thoughtfully. You know, she says, grace is often a luxury afforded to those who already feel safe. The audience murmurs again, louder this time. Paul inhales slowly. This is the heart of it now. The core. I don't feel immune, he says quietly. And I don't think safety is as simple as it looks from the outside. Sunny's voice sharpens. With respect, Paul, you're a wealthy, celebrated actor. Many people watching don't have that buffer. Paul nods again, acknowledging the truth in that. That's true, and I don't deny my privilege. But privilege doesn't cancel responsibility. It complicates it. How so? Sunny asks. Because it means I have to make sure I'm not speaking over people, he says. Not replacing their voices with mine. The studio is silent now. No murmurs. No claps. Just listening. Sunny taps her pen against the table once, then sets it down. Some would argue that staying quiet still centers you. Paul smiles faintly, not amused but reflective. And some would argue that demanding a statement centers the celebrity, not the cause. That lands hard. A few people in the audience clap instinctively, then stop, unsure if it's appropriate. The tension feels almost unbearable now, like the moment before a storm breaks. Sunny looks directly into the camera for a second, then back at Paul. Do you think there's a double standard? She asks. That certain celebrities are forgiven for silence while others are punished? Paul considers this carefully. Yes, he says. And I think that inconsistency hurts the conversation. Sunny's tone shifts again, more personal now. So where does that leave people who feel unheard? Paul's voice softens, but it doesn't weaken. It leaves them deserving of being heard, not filtered through outrage cycles or sound bites. One of the hosts exhales audibly. Another nods slowly. The audience feels split but engaged, leaning forward in their seats. Sunny studies Paul for a long moment. There's no hostility in her eyes now, just intensity, maybe even frustration mixed with curiosity. I'll be honest, she says. I think a lot of viewers expected a different answer from you today. Paul chuckles lightly, the first hint of levity in minutes. I get that. Do you care? She asks. Yes, he says without hesitation. But I care more about being consistent with myself than being predictable. That line sparks applause, stronger this time. It rolls through the studio in a wave, undeniable. Sunny waits for it to die down, her expression unreadable. When it does, she nods slowly. I may not agree with you, she says, but I respect that you're standing your ground. Paul inclines his head. Thank you. The show moves on again, shifting topics, lightening the mood. A joke is made. Laughter returns, but it's different now, thinner, edged with the awareness that something real just happened. As the cameras pan out, Paul glances briefly toward the audience. He sees the faces, some inspired, some unconvinced, some conflicted. He knows this conversation won't end here. It never does. Behind the scenes, social media is already on fire. Clips are being clipped, captions sharpened into weapons or shields. Paul Rudd shuts down Sunny Hostin. Sunny Hostin challenges Paul Rudd. Two truths, one moment. And Sunny, as she smiles for the camera, 1,000 thoughts race through her mind. She didn't come here to soften the message. But she didn't expect resistance delivered so calmly, so firmly. The credits begin to roll soon after. Applause fills the studio once more. Paul stands, shakes hands, thanks the hosts. Sunny meets his eyes as they part, a look passing between them. Mutual respect, unresolved tension. As Paul walks off stage, a producer whispers, "That was intense." Paul just nods. Yeah, He has no idea yet how far those few minutes will travel, how they'll be dissected, debated, defended, and condemned. But one thing is clear now. The calm is still there. And so is the stand. And outside the studio walls, the noise is only just beginning. By the time Paul Rudd steps out into the cool air beyond the studio doors, the world has already shifted. Phones vibrate in pockets. Screens glow in cars idling at red lights. Inside the building, assistants whisper urgently, scrolling, refreshing, watching numbers climb in real time. A clip barely 3 minutes long is spreading faster than anyone anticipated, captions sharpened like blades, thumbnails frozen on Paul's calm expression and Sunny Hostin's unflinching stare. Paul pauses for a moment on the sidewalk, letting the noise of the city wash over him. Traffic hums. A siren wails somewhere in the distance. He pulls his jacket tighter, not because he's cold, but because there's a familiar pressure settling in his chest, the aftershock of saying something that can't be taken back. His publicist approaches carefully, phone already in hand. "It's big," she says, choosing her words. "Really big." Paul doesn't ask for details. He doesn't need to. He's lived long enough in this industry to recognize the feeling. That quiet moment after the drop, when gravity finally kicks in. Inside the studio, Sunny Hostin remains seated long after the cameras stop rolling. Her notes lie untouched now. A producer asks if she's okay. She nods, but her eyes stay fixed on the empty chair where Paul had been sitting just minutes earlier. She replays the exchange in her mind. Every question, every answer, the way the audience reacted, not uniformly, not comfortably. She's proud she pushed. She always pushes. But there's a flicker of something else too. Not regret. Reflection. In the control room, a monitor replays the moment Paul said, "Leadership isn't always loud." Someone mutters, "That line's going everywhere." And it is. By the time Paul reaches his car, the first headlines are already live. Paul Rudd stuns the view with calm pushback. Sunny Hostin presses Paul Rudd on celebrity silence, and he doesn't budge. Internet divided after Paul Rudd, Sunny Hostin clash. Divided is an understatement. Within hours, the internet fractures into camps. Clips loop endlessly, slowed down, zoomed in, overlaid with dramatic music. One version paints Paul as the voice of reason, the rare celebrity who refuses to perform activism for applause. Another frames him as evasive, privileged, hiding behind calm to avoid accountability. Hashtags trend. His name sits at the center of a digital storm. Paul Rudd's right surges upward, buoyed by fans praising his composure. Leadership is loud rises just as fast, fueled by critics who see his words as dangerously dismissive. Paul sits in the back seat of the car, watching the city blur past. His phone buzzes incessantly, texts from friends, colleagues, family. Some supportive, some cautious, some clearly worried. One message stands out. It's from an actor he's worked with years ago, someone known for being outspoken. "Man," it reads, "you walked into the fire and didn't flinch." Paul exhales through his nose, a half smile tugging at his lips. He types back simply, "Didn't feel like flinching." At home, he sets his phone down face up on the counter and pours a glass of water. The house is quiet. Too quiet. He takes a sip, then another, staring out the window as the sun dips lower in the sky. For the first time since the interview, a sliver of doubt creeps in. Not about what he believes, but about how it will be heard. He knows nuance doesn't travel well online. He knows calm can be mistaken for coldness. He rubs his temple, considering whether he should clarify. Post something. Explain. He doesn't. Across town, Sunny Hostin is having her own evening. She scrolls through her mentions, jaw set. Support pours in from activists and viewers who felt seen by her questions. "Thank you for holding him accountable. You said what needed to be said." But there's backlash too. Accusations that she was too aggressive. That she attacked a beloved figure. That she pushed too hard. One comment catches her eye. "You tried to corner him, and he stood his ground with respect." That shook you. Sunny stares at the screen for a long moment, then locks her phone. She leans back on her couch, arms crossed, staring at the ceiling. Did it shake her? She replays his voice again in her head. Not defensive. Not dismissive. Just firm. She doesn't agree with him. That hasn't changed. But she recognizes something else now. A refusal to be molded by expectation. And whether people love or hate it, that refusal has power. The next morning, talk shows light up like fireworks. Pundits dissect the exchange frame by frame. Body language experts analyze Paul's posture, Sunny's gaze. Commentators argue over who won, as if conversation itself were a sport. He was patronizing, one panelist declares. No, he was principled, another counters. That's what real confidence looks like. On a morning radio show, a caller says, "I've never seen someone disagree so calmly on live TV. It made me uncomfortable, in a good way." On another channel, a host scoffs. Calmness isn't courage. It's camouflage. The clip hits millions of views by noon. Paul's team urges him to release a statement. Just something brief, they say. Clarify your intentions. He listens. He always listens. Then he shakes his head. If I explain, he says, it becomes about managing optics. That's exactly what I didn't want. His publicist sighs, torn between strategy and respect. You know they're going to keep asking. Paul nods. I know. At The View, the mood is different now. Heavier. More alert. The hosts gather around the table before going live, discussing the fallout. Sunny is quieter than usual, but not withdrawn. We didn't do anything wrong, one co-host says. This is what conversation looks like. Sunny nods. Yes, but conversation has consequences. When the show airs, Sunny addresses the moment directly. Yesterday's conversation sparked a lot of debate, she says, looking straight into the camera. And that's not a bad thing. Discomfort is part of growth. The audience applauds. But the applause is mixed, layered with tension. Back online, the reaction to her response is immediate. Some praise her grace. Others accuse her of doubling down. The fire doesn't die, it evolves. Paul watches the clip later that night, sitting on the edge of his bed. He studies Sunny's face, her words. He feels no resentment, only a strange sense of inevitability. He knows this was never just about the two of them. It was about projection, about expectation, about a culture desperate for certainty in villains and heroes, even when reality offers something messier. Late that evening, Paul receives a call from a young actor he mentors occasionally. The voice on the other end is hesitant. I just wanted to say, the actor begins, watching you it helped. I've been afraid to speak because I don't know how to say things perfectly. Seeing you stand there and not shout, not perform, it made me feel like maybe there's another way. Paul closes his eyes, absorbing that. When he speaks, his voice is soft. There is, he says. And it's okay if it's imperfect. After the call ends, he sits in silence for a long time. Across the city, Sunny is doing the same. She's on her balcony now, city lights blinking below. Her phone rests beside her, screen dark. She thinks about the viewers who thanked her, the ones who criticized her, the ones who felt conflicted. She thinks about Paul's words. Disagreement doesn't have to mean disrespect. She exhales slowly. The narrative online continues to harden, to simplify. Memes reduce the moment to punchlines. Clips strip context. The calm becomes arrogance to some. The pushback becomes courage to others. But beneath the noise, something deeper is happening. People are talking, not just about Paul Rudd or Sunny Hostin, but about what they expect from voices with power. About whether loudness equals truth. About whether calmness can coexist with conviction. Neither Paul nor Sunny controls that conversation now. And maybe that's the point, because the moment has escaped them. It belongs to the audience now, to the comment sections, to dinner table debates, to group chats buzzing late into the night. The calm stand has become a mirror, and everyone sees something different reflected back. As the days pass, the storm doesn't fade, it crystallizes. And with every new take, every new reaction, one truth becomes unavoidable. This wasn't just a television moment. It was a cultural fault line, and it's still cracking. By the end of the week, the moment has outgrown the studio that gave birth to it. What began as a few minutes of measured conversation has now exploded into a full-blown cultural referendum, echoing across newsrooms, campuses, podcasts, and living rooms. Screens everywhere replay the same exchange. Paul Rudd sitting calmly at the table, Sunny Hostin leaning forward with conviction. Frozen in time like two opposing forces locked in a quiet collision. The audience reaction becomes a story of its own. Clips surface of people watching The View from their couches, phones held up as they react in real time. Some nod along with Paul, whispering, "Exactly." Others shake their heads, frustration written plainly across their faces. Reaction videos pile up by the thousands, each creator framing the moment through their own lens. This is how you disagree with respect, one says. This is how privilege protects itself, another fires back. There is no middle ground online. Only sides. In New York, a media studies professor opens her lecture with the clip, pausing it mid-sentence. Notice the tone, she tells her class. Notice how power can sound polite. Students argue openly, voices rising, hands waving. Some defend Paul's restraint. Others side with Sunny's insistence on urgency. No one leaves indifferent. Late-night hosts jump in next. One jokes about Paul's eternal youth, quipping, "Even his arguments don't age." The laughter is easy, but the subtext isn't. Another host takes a sharper angle, questioning whether calmness is the new celebrity shield. The audience laughs, then goes quiet. Opinion columns follow. One headline reads, "The problem with polite disagreement." Another counters with, "Why Paul Rudd's calm may be exactly what we need." Sunny Hostin watches one of these segments from her office, arms folded, expression unreadable. She has been invited onto multiple shows to respond, to clarify, to finish the conversation. She accepts one. Sitting under different lights, on a different set, she speaks carefully. "I don't regret the questions I asked," she says. "My job is to challenge power. If that makes people uncomfortable, then the conversation is doing its work." The clip goes viral too. Paul Rudd, on the other hand, remains largely silent. He attends a charity event days later, smiling for photos, answering questions about films and nothing else. Reporters try to pivot. "Any thoughts on the controversy?" One calls out. Paul pauses, turns back, and says only this, "I think listening matters." That single sentence ignites another wave. Fans praise his consistency. Critics accuse him of avoidance. Think pieces multiply. The internet, starved for resolution, gnaws at the silence, trying to extract meaning from what isn't said. Behind the scenes, the emotional toll begins to surface. Sunny admits to a close friend that the backlash surprised her. Not its existence, but its intensity. "It's like people want a winner," she says. But that was never the point. Paul confides in his wife one evening, sitting at the kitchen table long after dinner. "I didn't want to be a symbol," he says quietly. "I just wanted to be honest." She reaches across the table, squeezes his hand. "You were." The audience reaction continues to evolve. Emails flood into the view. Some thank Sunny for saying what they felt but couldn't articulate. Others accuse the show of ambushing a guest. The network releases a statement praising open dialogue and diverse perspectives, carefully neutral, carefully safe. But the viewers aren't neutral. A woman writes, "Watching Paul stay calm made me realize how often I mistake volume for truth." Another responds to the show, "Sunny gave voice to people who don't get to be calm, because their lives are on the line." Both letters are read in meetings. Both are shared quietly among staff. No one dismisses either. Weeks pass, and the moment doesn't disappear. It settles. The clip becomes shorthand. Like that Paul Rudd thing, people say in arguments as if everyone knows exactly what they mean. It's referenced in classrooms, on podcasts, in debates that have nothing to do with celebrities at all. And that's when its true impact becomes clear. It stopped being about Paul Rudd versus Sunny Hostin. It became about how we listen, about what we demand from voices with influence, about whether conviction must shout to be valid, or whether calm can carry weight of its own. For some, Paul's stand becomes a model, proof that you can refuse to perform and still engage. For others, Sunny's challenge stands taller, evidence that power must always be pressed, especially when it wears a friendly face. Neither narrative wins completely, and maybe that's why the moment endures. On a quiet morning, long after the headlines have cooled, Paul scrolls through comments on a video reposted by a fan channel. He rarely does this. One comment stops him. "I don't agree with him," it reads. "But watching this made me think instead of just react." He sets the phone down, a slow breath leaving his chest. Across the city, Sunny prepares for another show, flipping through notes. A producer mentions that the clip is still trending in certain circles. She nods, unsurprised. "Good," she says. "It means people are still talking." And they are, because that calm but firm stand, met by an unflinching challenge, created something rare in modern media, a moment that refused to be neatly resolved, a moment that asked the audience to sit with discomfort, to choose what they believe and why. Now it's your turn. What did you see in that exchange? Courage? Deflection? Accountability? Or something more complicated? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I want to hear how you experienced it. And if you're here for stories that pull back the curtain on the most intense, dramatic moments in pop culture, make sure you subscribe to Stage View right now. Like this video, share it with someone who loves a good debate, and stay with us, because more explosive cinematic stories are coming, and you won't want to miss what happens next.